So data is everywhere, and as a marketer, the problem isn't always acquiring the data. It's more about being able to analyze the data that you see within your performance marketing campaigns, and more importantly, how to derive and extract actionable insights, whether that's from meta ads or Google ads or your affiliate marketing program. There's a lot of metrics that we can get overwhelmed with. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you my personal approach in analyzing data and deriving actionable insights so you can improve your performance long term. Let's talk about why is it important to analyze your data as a performance marketer. The first one is you want to improve your performance over time. It's not like you launch a performance marketing campaign on Meta ads or Google ads and it becomes static, even if it does perform well for this week or it's performed really well the previous month without optimizing it. It doesn't mean you're going to get the same performance or results over the next couple of weeks, right? There's going to be nuanced changes alongside your performance. It's going to fluctuate a lot. So being able to understand trends and analyze your data is very important from that point of view. Second is you want to understand where there is sparks of fire, where you can potentially double down on. So for example, on Facebook, you get to see that a specific audience type within your ad set performs better than the rest. It might be a specific creative. If it's a specific creative, let's say a user-generated content, it might be that, hey, we're seeing that this type of creative does really well for us. Let's double down. Let's create more UGC content, because if we compare conversion rates compared to an image or a standard video ad, it doesn't work too well. So basically using the data that you see to optimize your performance. Third is something a bit more unique, which is being able to look at your performance marketing data and being able to understand your customers' behavior. So going back to what I said previously with creatives, you might find that a specific type of messaging or tone of voice or ad copy resonates a lot more in terms of either people clicking on the ad or people actually converting if you're working on a conversion-based campaign. So you get to understand what performs best, but also understand consumer behavior. We're getting into the realms of user psychology, which is a very important skill in marketing. A lot of what we're doing is actually influencing people, whether you like to believe that or not. And then the final point why we want to analyze our performance marketing data is to have a longer term approach to marketing and improving our metrics to support the business. Because the strategy that we have right now, very likely 9 times out of 10, it's going to be different from the strategy you have over the next quarter or the next year, so on and so forth. So you want to keep evolving as the data evolves with us. So the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between metrics and dimensions, which are the two primary elements you'll need to analyze your data. So when we talk about metrics, it's simply a quantitative measurement of your data. That could either be the amount of clicks your ad has got, could be number of conversions, it could be how much revenue you have. So it's very much tied to a specific number. Whereas dimensions is more of a qualitative representation of that data. It could also be a category. For example, it could be the date of your campaign, it could be location, it could be someone's age, it could be the device that user has come from, or it could be the source or medium that user has come from as well. Think of dimensions as the main way to group your data, but then the metrics are the specific numbers of that data. So for example, your campaign names or your campaigns, that's a dimension, but the numbers that campaign has are your metrics. Next is I want to talk about attributions, attribution windows, and attribution models. So attribution is simply you determining where a specific conversion has come from, whether that conversion has come from a specific landing page, a specific ad or campaign or marketing channel. It could be from your email, could be from your performance marketing campaigns. It's just a way to essentially point out where that conversion or event has come from. When we talk about attribution models, this is where we assign credit to a specific conversion throughout a touch point, right? There are different types of attribution models. In fact, I actually made a video on all things attribution. I will link that below if you're interested in watching. But going back to attribution models, the different types are first click. This is when you want your conversion to be claimed by a user who has initially first clicked from that channel. The second attribution model is last click. This is a lot of ad networks actually use a last click attribution, where if the conversion happened and the last action that a user has taken is then clicking on the ad, Facebook or Google is going to claim that and say that conversion came from us. And then a newer attribution model you'll very likely be using if you're using Google Analytics, for example, is data-driven attribution. So that's essentially the algorithm deciding the weight of every channel or touch point that a user has gone through Although there's a bit of bias there, if you're using Google Analytics, for example, it's very likely it's always going to attribute it to either search or organic or direct. The topic of attribution is very complicated. Which is the right attribution model? What's the right attribution window? And we're going to talk about approaches into how you can approach that specific friction point. All right, so finally, attribution windows. This is essentially you deciding how much of a window do you want to have for a channel to claim that specific conversion. And there's two types of attribution windows. There is a view-through window, which is essentially an ad impression. And then you have a click-through window, which is when someone clicks on an ad. So let's focus a view-through window. Usually you'll either have a 1-day view-through window or a 7-day view-through window. What that means is if we choose 7-day window, which I would advise, you're basically saying that if within 7 days that user has seen an ad, you have an ad impression from that specific user, and they've converted within that 7-day, I want that conversion to be claimed by that specific channel. Now, if the user sees the ad within a 7-day window, but they buy on day 8, for example, your advertising channel is not going to claim that conversion. So now if we talk about click-through windows, it's the same exact concept. If it's, let's say you've chosen a 1-day click-through window for your reporting, if the user sees the ad and clicks on the ad within 24 hours of seeing it, and they bought the product within that 24-hour window, that ad network or channel is going to claim that conversion. But if they've seen the ad or clicked on the ad, but they've converted post 24 hours, your ad network is not going to claim that conversion. But there's always nuances around that, and it starts to get more complicated. But that's the simple premise of attribution windows. So the next thing I want to talk about is data visualization. Now, I do admit that a lot of performance marketers tend to do it the scrappy way, where they either just take data from the ad network or performance marketing channel, or even worse, they export a CSV or Excel file from the ad network and kind of create pivot tables using that. And there's definitely that approach if you don't have the budget or the tools, or you don't have the skills to build a data visualization dashboard. But I would actually advise you to create a simple data visualization dashboard. And in fact, if you want me to create a separate video on end-to-end building an omnichannel marketing dashboard, leave that in the comments below and I'll add it to the pipeline. So what is data visualization? It's simply you being able to contextualize your data in a visual manner. So that could be looking at your data as a bar chart, or a line trend, or a bubble, or a heat map, or even a simple pivot table. It's a way for you to understand your data more visually rather than just looking at numbers, right? If you're thinking, hey, John, I can already see the data from the ad networks themselves or from Google Analytics, for example, what's the point of me visualizing my data? There's lots of benefits, and I'm going to read through some of these benefits, which very likely will probably encourage you to start to learn how to visualize your data. The first one is being able to quickly filter through different dimensions, like being able to understand data from a specific location, or from a specific campaign, or from a specific ad network or performance marketing channel. Second is a quick overview of your performance in a visual context versus just looking at numbers. It's easy to get overwhelmed with a lot of numbers, but sometimes when you're seeing that data in a visual manner, it's easier to understand. Your brain likes to see patterns in a visual manner much more than numbers. Next is it's a lot easier to identify patterns and trends, so it's a lot faster to see that in a visual manner, going kind of building on top of the previous point. And then another to that is that it's just easier to create a narrative and consolidate your insights when you're able to visualize data versus just looking at numbers. If you're a performance marketer, you know this to be true, especially if you're working on agency side. When you're reporting on numbers, it can easily get quite boring. Your end client might start to get bored if they have a way to visually see the data and maybe even filter it themselves. They get a lot more excited rather than just looking at a Google Sheet or an Excel file full of numbers and random columns and rows without context, right? It helps you be more contextual when you're reporting. For the most part, if you're using a data integration tool like Funnel or Supermetrics, you can get as close to real-time data or potentially a 12-hour delay. And that's very useful if you want to understand how you're performing across different channels in real time, right? You can pivot your strategy within an instant. You start to see, hey, we've launched this campaign. For some reason, it's not spending. Let me go there and see what's happening. Especially if you have a performance marketing campaign across different ad networks with different locations, it's good to just be able to zoom out and understand what's happening from an omni-channel point of view, rather than going to the ad network and filtering the campaign and seeing it one by one. That's going to take a lot of time, and it's a bit of a friction point. As your performance marketing campaigns or account structure or hierarchy starts to get a bit more complicated, you want to be more mindful of your approach to analyzing and viewing that data. Hence, data visualization is something I would urge you to learn. One of the best ways to do this is, again, this is outside the scope of the video, but if you're interested in learning how to do this, you can use a tool like Funnel, where you integrate all your data, and then you can push that out to a free tool called Looker Studio, and I'll leave links for that below. I highly encourage you to check them out. And then closing off in terms of the framework of visualizing your data and understanding it, it's pretty simple. It's data acquisition, data extraction, data organization, data transfer, data visualization, and then extracting insights, and then using those insights into optimizations or action points. That's the whole point of data, right? You want to analyze the data so we can improve our performance. Because if you're just analyzing data for the sake of it without any post-action point, what's the point of analyzing data? It's just data sitting there essentially, right? So my approach would be, before you even look at data, even if it's a Google Sheet or a dashboard of your data, I would be inclined to already have questions you want answered, because what happens if you just open a dashboard and you see a bunch of data, you start to become biased with the way that you see data, and you start to be a bit too zoned in on a specific narrative. Whereas if you have questions in mind already prior, you tend to be a bit more neutral about it. Typical questions you'll probably ask if you're a performance marketer is, are we in line with our spend based upon what we forecasted for the month? Which channels are giving us the most volume of conversions or better profitability if you're an e-commerce brand? Which ad sets or ads or keywords are getting us more clicks or have higher click-through rates? And then are there any anomalies in the data that doesn't seem quite accurate? And I can guarantee there probably is going to be at least one. By the way, if you want a specific framework or even an example of how I would report data, especially performance marketing data, you could be working agency side and you'll learn how to do that. Again, leave your requests in the comment section below and I can create a video specifically for that. And then closing off, when you're extracting insights, make sure, as mentioned, always have some sort of a post-action after. It could even be as simple as pausing specific ads. It could be reallocating budgets from one channel or one campaign to another. It could be testing out new creatives. So you're always turning insights into an action, right? There always needs to be a bit of an output. And then when you're reporting on data, make sure that there's some form of narrative, right? So you always want to talk about historical context of what's happened the previous week. How do we compare to last week in terms of performance? And then a bit of a secret hint here is always think about external variables or factors that happen that relates to your business category. If you want to become a great performance marketer, don't just zoom in on the ad networks or the channels. Make sure you think about what's happening within the industry that you're in. And we're going to close off the video with that point. Thank you for watching. Until next time, peace, my friend.